Welcome to the PharmaSource podcast. I'm joined today by Dr. Eric Hughes, who's EVP of Global R&D and Chief Medical Officer at Teva. Now, Teva's going through a real growth period with 10 consecutive quarters of growth, and we're going to talk today about the role of innovative drugs in the company's current and continued success. So, Eric, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be talking about Teva's journey.
It's a really interesting story. So maybe we could kick off, Eric, with a bit of background into Teva's pivot to growth. About 2 years in now, it'd be great to understand a bit more about that and where it came from.
Yeah, so the journey started 2 years ago when Richard Francis became our new CEO. I was fortunate enough to start about 6 months before him to get some of the innovation changes going. And then he showed up and it was like throwing gas on fire. So it's been a real great journey. As you know, Teva is known for its generics pipeline, but it's always been an innovative company. We've had Azilect and Copaxone in the past that were very successful innovative drugs. We just happen to do generics very well, but with this new pivot to growth, we're really leaning in on our innovative pipeline.
Yeah. So what prompted that? What was that shift driven by?
When Richard showed up, his idea and his goal is our growth of the company. And the greatest opportunity at Teva for sure is our innovative pipeline. So as I said, we're well known for generics. We do that very well. We have a powerhouse there, but we also have a great pipeline. He was very excited to look under the hood, so to speak, and see what we have going. So that's an integral part of our pivot to growth strategy, is that stepping up and innovation. And it's really born from our pipeline.
So it'd be good to understand a bit more about you and how your background led up to that. It's a pretty big challenge, isn't it? When a company like Teva says, right, let's now start to innovate. What was your lead up to that?
The story of me goes a long way, but in a nutshell, I love drug development. I love what we do. The purpose of helping patients using science to change the practice of medicine is what gets me going every day. And over the last 21 years, I've had this wonderful career working at many different pharmaceutical companies, from big companies to small companies, and having experience across the globe in different countries, different cultures. It's something that gets me up in the morning. And, the opportunity at Teva was, perfectly timed for me, knowing, my love of organizational effectiveness and, the modern drug development matrix applied to drug development. And I think the wonderful thing about Teva when I came was they had a desire to change and pivot in their journey right now. So the cultural change, the mindset shift, and the organizational structure we put in place has really been able to really accelerate that innovative pivot.
Coming into that then, were there particular candidates or modalities which had already been agreed as these the ones we're going to focus on? I mean, where do you start with something like that?
I think the strategy that we've implemented really plays to the strengths of Teva. So Teva has a history and a strength in neurosciences. That was a given. We had great expertise, and we had a platform both in the R&D organization, the commercial organization to lean into. We also have laboratories that do a great job at making antibodies and engineering proteins. And that lends itself very easily to the immunology space. So, we can talk about our programs, but we're really leaning into that strength, the heritage we have, like as an example, duvakitug and our anti-IL-15 program and our PD-1 IL-2. These are all immunology-driven programs that really lend to that protein engineering and antibody strength that we have.
In terms of the overall portfolio, then you've got generics, biosimilars, and innovative drugs. How does that all fall under a single strategy? And operationally, are they all completely separate business units? How does it fit together?
Well, actually, I'm glad you bring that up, because that's one of the most important things I did when I got here. So, one of the things that drug development is it's very complex. And the only way you can do it is in a matrix of functions and expertise. So that was something that we needed to, reinstitute at Teva. So when we did that, we have a business unit of generics, biosimilars, and innovative, where they're all matrixed into our functions of all the normal functions you'd have and a modern drug development system.
Mhm.
So what we were able to do is capitalize on all the synergies of those different business units. To me, it's all just drug development. There's a lot more similarities between a generic and an innovative program than I think most people recognize. Our generics has fantastic formulation capabilities. It has fantastic device capabilities. Those can be helpful to our innovative efforts. So the infrastructure was great. We just had to have the new structure and matrix of all these organizations really capitalize on the talents we have at Teva.
It seems like, in terms of how you're approaching it, while we've just been talking about Teva and internal innovation, I mean, you've partnered with Sanofi, for example. It'd be great to understand your current pipeline and how you decide what you're going to develop, just purely yourselves, what you're going to co-develop. How are you tackling that?
Yeah, so that's been one of the most exciting things I've done since I got here at Teva. I mean, we've done deals that I've been trying to do throughout my entire pharmaceutical career.
Hmm.
The opportunity at Teva was just perfect. So we've done a breadth of different types of deals. And the ultimate goal is a couple things, increasing our bandwidth, accelerating our platforms and our pipeline, and really funding that, so that's not a problem. So we remove funding from a challenge. So, for one example, you brought up the partnership with Sanofi. That was a perfect partnership for both of us to expand our bandwidth and really blow open a very big program that will go into multiple indications in the future. So, we're sharing both the costs and the profits, but we're also extending our bandwidth.
And then in terms of the IP, how does that work?
So, it was a Teva born and raised molecule.
Hmm.
So we have the IP, and we now share that globally with Sanofi. So
Hmm.
we're sharing our profits 50-50 as well as the cost. So it's a great partnership to really lean into the breadth of what duvakitug will be.
And then obviously there's also Fosun Pharma as well on the immunology side.
Yeah, so that's the most recent one on the other end of the spectrum, where we're doing an oncology program that's in the early space. Again, it's a beautifully engineered anti-PD-1 antibody that's combined with an attenuated IL-2. Fascinating science, but oncology is not necessarily our focus, but to accelerate what could potentially be a very valuable compound. We partnered with Fosun, and what I would say is a new, an innovative partnership that we're kind of leading the edge here, where we're not bringing compounds from China from their innovation. We're bringing an innovative product to China to actually capitalize on the burgeoning infrastructure of drug development in China, as well as the opportunity for patients there. There's a lot of unmet medical need, and these will be things that will accelerate that program quite a bit.
That's interesting because there's so much innovation in the biotech space coming out of China at the moment, huge
Yeah.
amount. But it sounds like you're going the other way. You're
Yeah.
taking yours to China.
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing drug development in China on and off for 20 years. And, at the beginning, 20 years ago, there was no innovation, there was no structure for development, and there was no regulatory process. Then the government stepped in and leaned into learning drug development, changing the regulatory environment, and getting that expertise they needed. Now we're in that third wave where actual innovation is coming from China, and they have an infrastructure and a regulatory process, is cutting edge. So that's an opportunity for people in drug development.
Coming onto the current geopolitical situation, does that cause any issues dealing with China? I'm thinking particularly about China in the US. Even though Biosecure Act isn't there in the current form, it's becoming an increasingly difficult environment for those borderless collaborations.
Yeah, so you have to know the rules. You have to know where and how to set up a deal so that you optimize it both for the China company and the global company. So there are ways of doing this. I would say there's more advantages than disadvantages if you know what you're doing to make sure you set up the deals and the partnerships correctly.
Thank you. We started talking about partnerships with other pharma companies, but innovation doesn't just happen within one company. Typically, people will engage with a network of service providers, be there CROs, CDMOs, and others. How do you manage that? Maybe to start with, what's the general size or shape of that ecosystem you're building around you?
Yeah. So this is a super important topic. And I think that, the strategy that Teva is going to take is we're not going to build a giant, massive monitoring system and clinical research organization in every country around the world.
Mm.
We like to really find those CROs, those partners who fit nicely into our structure. And I think that, you have to think about what's the good part about the CROs and what do you want to keep in-house. What you want to keep in-house is usually that, that initiation of the studies, your site engagement, and your data management. So you have to focus on what you need to control in-house, but you have to then know that you'll partner across the globe to run these studies. So we really lean into the real partnership with CROs in a way that we can capitalize on their structure and infrastructure around the world, but be a real accelerator of our internal work.
What do you look for from a service provider? I mean, we always hear about how it's almost like the same sort of importance as a marriage, really. It's definitely not a transaction. It's a very, long-term strategic fit that you're trying to find. Cultural fit being some of it, the right kind of size, the right kind of science. How do you go into those partnerships to find the right fit for you?
So let's not forget the words we're using about when we talk about a CRO. We're talking about a partnership. If you treat a CRO like a vendor and you just tell them what to do and you don't want to hear any feedback, you're guaranteed to fail.
Mm.
You have to treat a CRO as someone who is in a mission together, where they understand that we both want to succeed, and that has to go both ways. They have to give us feedback. If I'm getting something wrong, I want to know it, and the CRO has to know that they're comfortable enough to tell me that's not going to work. I've got a better idea. So you really have to treat a CRO in this endeavor as a partner in all aspects of that.
Mm.
So, and that's when I see it succeed. When that relationship breaks down, it fails.
Are there any sort of common challenges which you're looking out for when you're deciding to put work externally, or how to coordinate development across both your internal and external partners? And I wonder if there's any, advice or best practices you could share about how to do that.
You do want to pick your CROs carefully. The best situation is where their size matches your size. They're willing to tell you that they can't do something. I love when a CRO says that they can't do something. They don't want to overpromise. And if they have a specialty or a special expertise in a therapeutic area, that it's something we look for. But I think by and large, the most important thing is how well do they collaborate and work with you and partner. You really want to have them. The best situation is when you forget the lines between the CRO and your own internal people. If you forget who works for what company, that's the perfect situation.
Teva, of course, provides CDMO services to other companies.
Yeah. The API group might do more of that. So we do have external capabilities that we build. And they use a lot of CDMOs when we scale up and we need to do special formulations or bespoke programs. We do use CDMO. We use a lot more CDMOs than we provide to them. We do API work in TAPI. But we do a lot of that. And there's a lot of advantages of that because of, specialty products, technologies that we want to learn, or things that we don't want to develop internally and we want to do outside. So it's a big process. There's a lot of that being done in our generics and our biosimilars group.
When it comes to contract service providers, do you feel as though they're evolving fast enough? Are they keeping up with the complexity of all of this?
So, I mean, that's an important question because, when you think about the complexity of what they have to do, both CROs and CDMOs, they have to invest a lot of money into the AI technology, the new ways of doing things, but the processes and the infrastructure that they have to build. I can't do that within Teva, or a lot of other companies can't invest that amount of money that they need to keep up. And there's a lot that can be done there. So having them be specialized in their CRO work or their CDMO work, whatever that may be, I'd much rather have them invest in it and get the benefits of the scale that they can get as being the expert than having me spend my money maintaining those systems. So it's an important part of CRO and CDMO work.
Mm-hmm. If you had sort of one wish for the sector to support you better now and into the future, what would it be?
Don't overpromise and deliver on what you say, and hit the timelines. That's the most important thing.
Thank you. Stepping back a bit, I wonder if we could talk about the overall trends that you're seeing at the moment in the drug development landscape? I mean, there's so many up and coming modalities. Part of the news of this week was around mRNA in the US, right? Where it feels like that's taking a step back with $500 million worth of funding coming out of it. What's on your radar at the moment as being important?
Yeah, so there's a couple things that I pay attention to just broadly in the drug development world. I mean, certainly mRNA is here to stay. You know, both siRNA and mRNA are things that science will just continue to go forward. So I'm not too worried about that being falling off the radar. Other things that I think that are trending very strongly are the world of bispecifics. You know, there's a lot of activity in bispecifics in the oncology world, but there's also a lot of activity in the in the inflammatory space because there's a lot of known science around different targets and bringing them together to increase the efficacy that we can achieve is something that I think will naturally progress. Other things that we're interested in too is, the degrader space.
Mhm.
That's a very potent way of attacking targets, whether it's a small molecule degrader or an antibody-directed degrader. That's a very exciting world right now that I think that will explode in the future.
How do you keep your finger on the pulse personally? I mean, how do you keep up to date with everything?
What it comes down to is being curious. I think
Mm.
that the best scientists out there, look forward to the next issue of like New England Journal or whatever favorite article you look at. And it's a love of what we do. I mean, it comes down to that. And I think the fascination with the different modalities, being part of the network of drug developers around the world. I have friends at many different companies. I love keeping in touch with them and understanding, what's getting them excited around the world.
It's such a fascinating space, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's the most purposeful job you can have in life.
Yeah.
Like we said at the beginning, using science to help patients and change the practice of medicine is the best thing I can think of doing in my life.
Yeah, yeah. If we could project 5 years forward, say, what's your vision for how the company will be known in the innovator drug space?
Well, I think the book is going to be an interesting one to read. I mean, I joke with Richard Francis every once in a while that we want to make this someday a Harvard Business Review about
Mm.
how we took a company that, was doing great and served almost 200 million people every day, and we transformed it into a leading biopharmaceutical company that is a highly innovative, internationally well-known company. That's what it's going to be in
Yeah.
5 to 10 years.
And in terms of what it's going to take to get there, I mean, are there any particular roadblocks or barriers that need to change?
I think we're well on our track. I mean, I always like to remind people we have three large phase 3 programs with a high probability of success right now. That's just the beginning of it. And we have great in-market products right now that are growing very well. It's a perfect trajectory right now. So it's not a matter of whether we're going to succeed. It's going to be how much are we going to succeed.
Eric, thank you so much for your time today. Pleasure speaking to you.
Oh, it was great talking to you, Luke. Thank you.